338,000 souls, trapped against a cold, rising tide. One man stands between them and total annihilation. The year is 1940. The most powerful army on Earth has just collapsed. The impossible has happened. France has fallen. London is in a state of quiet panic. The generals have already conceded defeat. They tell him the British army is lost forever. Every expert predicted failure. The records say the numbers were a death sentence for the West. 10 days to save an empire or lose the world. This isn't just a story about a retreat. It is a story of tactical defiance and raw grit. Because Churchill decided to play by a different set of rules. He didn't look to the battleships for the answer. He looked to the civilians, the dreamers, and the brave. The method he used is still taught at West Point today. At the 7-minute mark, you will see the turning point. A moment of brilliance that caught the enemy off guard. The odds were 1,000 to 1. He won. He liked. Our story begins in the smoke-filled war rooms of Whitehall, where the maps showed a disaster, but one man saw a miracle. This is the true story of Operation Dynamo. May 10th, 1940. The phony war ends in fire. Hitler's blitzkrieg smashes through the Ardennes forest. The impenetrable forest proves to be a highway for tanks. The British Expeditionary Force is cut off from its allies. They are forced back toward the coast of northern France. Behind them is the sea. In front of them, the panzers. Churchill is appointed Prime Minister on this very day. His first briefing is a list of mounting catastrophes. The generals tell him the army will be captured in 48 hours. The retreat to the coast is a race against time. Thousands of tons of equipment are left in the mud. The goal is simple. Reach the beaches of Dunkirk. Dunkirk is a geographical nightmare for a rescue. The water is too shallow for large naval destroyers. The ships ground themselves miles from the waiting men. Göring promises Hitler his planes will finish the job. No ship can move in daylight without being bombed. The British Navy expects to save only 30,000 men, but Churchill issues a secret, unconventional order. The Admiralty begins requisitioning every small boat in England, from lifeboats to trash haulers. No vessel is too small. An emergency broadcast goes out to the public. The government asks for vessels of a certain size. The response is something the world has never seen before. These are not soldiers. They are dentists and clerks. They are fathers and sons heading into a war zone. They have no armor, no guns, and no fear. They call it the Mosquito Fleet in the press. Hundreds of tiny dots start moving across the water. It is the most decentralized naval operation in history. Above the water, the RAF is flying to the limit. Churchill knows the ships need a roof of protection. The pilots fly for sorties a day until they collapse. Every bullet counts, and every minute is a life saved. The miracle is starting to take a physical shape, but the German tanks are now only 5 miles away. Lord Gort faces a choice. Hold the line or save the men. He chooses to disobey orders to march south. He turns the entire army north, toward the coast. The men are exhausted, hungry, and out of ammo. They form long, disciplined lines into the freezing sea, waiting for a boat that might never come. The harbor at Dunkirk is already a wreck. Sunken ships block the main channels for the Navy. The only way out is from the open, exposed beaches. Time is the enemy as much as the verb. Each hour, the perimeter around the city shrinks. The pocket is closing, and the trap is almost set. Churchill receives a telegram from the front. The words are grim. Situation critical. He knows the next 24 hours will decide the century. May 27th. The first wave of small ships arrives. They look like toys compared to the naval destroyers, but they have one massive advantage. A shallow draft. These boats can glide right up to the sand. They ferry 50 men at a time to the larger ships. A slow, agonizingly dangerous shuttle service begins. Imagine the sight from the shoreline. A luxury pleasure cruiser appearing through the smoke. The men realize the civilians have come for them. Charles Lightoller, a Titanic survivor, He's among them. He refuses to let the Navy take his boat. He sails his private yacht, the Sundowner, into the fire. Leitler's boat was built for 12 people. He pulls 130 soldiers onto the deck and into the cabin. He dodges Luftwaffe fire all the way back to England. The beaches are too slow for the massive. Captain Biltenin spots the East Mole at the harbor, a narrow wooden walkway stretching into deep water. It was never designed to dock a massive destroyer, but Tennant orders the ships to try anyway. The wood groans under the weight of thousands of boots. The mole becomes the Luftwaffe's primary target. There is no cover, no armor, and no escape. If the pier breaks, the main escape route vanishes. The sky turns black with the smoke of AA fire. British destroyers are being sunk in the narrow channel. The water is filled with oil, debris, and swimming men. Back in London, the pressure is unbearable. Lord Halifax suggests seeking peace terms through Italy. Churchill's response: nations which go down fighting rise again. On the sand, the discipline is haunting. Men stand in line as bombs explode around them. They wait their turn with a quiet, terrifying resolve. Some men have been standing in the surf for 24 hours. The cold begins to take hold before the enemy does. Every splash in the water is a hope for a boat. The shuttle system is now in full effect. Small boats carry men to the destroyers in the deep. It is a mechanical ballet performed under heavy fire. But why haven't the tanks crushed the beach yet? The German panzers are only 15 miles away. Then comes the most debated order in military history. The Holt Order? Hitler stops his tanks. He fears the marshy ground will trap his precious panzers. He leaves the final kill to the Luftwaffe. This gives Churchill a 48-hour window, a mistake that will cost the Third Reich the war. The impossible gap has just swung wide open. Then, a second miracle. The weather turns. The English Channel becomes as smooth as a mirror. Low clouds prevent the Luftwaffe from aiming accurately. Even the most fragile boats can now cross. River taxis and pleasure boats join the armada. Nature itself seems to be shielding the retreat. That's 50,000, the Admiralty reports. The original estimate of 30,000 has been shattered, but there is still 250,000 men on the sand. The RF is the invisible shield above the clouds. The soldiers on the beach think they've been abandoned. They can't see the air war happening miles inland. For every plane the soldiers see, 10 are engaged. British pilots are flying until their engines cease. The cost of the miracle is written in the sky. On board the civilian boats, the scene is surreal. Wealthy bankers are serving tea to exhausted privates. The class system of England dissolves on the water. Not every ship makes it back to Dover. The HMS Wakeful is snapped in half by a torpedo. 600 men are lost in less than 15 seconds. Nightfall brings a different kind of terror. The only light comes from the burning oil tanks. Navigation becomes a nightmare of wrecks and mines. Churchill prepares for the worst-case scenario. He is writing a speech for a national surrender. But the numbers coming from the coast tell a different story. May 30th on a calendar, sunlight breaking through. Day 5. The evacuation hits its peak. Over 60,000 men are rescued in a single 24-hour period. The British engineers use a stroke of genius. They drive hundreds of trucks into the water at low tide. They lay planks across them to create makeshift jetties. This truck pier speeds up the loading by 300%. It is a desperate, brilliant piece of field engineering. Every minute saved is a platoon brought home. We must not forget the French First Army. They are the shield of Dunkirk, holding the outskirts. They are sacrificing themselves so the British can escape. The perimeter is now a circle of fire. French and British rearguards fight, house to house. They know they will not be getting on the boats. The German halt order is finally lifted. The panzers are ordered to resume the attack. But the impossible window has already stayed open too long. The town of Dunkirk is now a skeleton of brick. The Luftwaffe drops thousands of leaflets on the men. The paper reads, "Your generals have fled. Surrender now." The response from the troops is a roar of laughter. They aren't broken. They are simply waiting for a ride. Morale, against all logic, begins to climb. The danger moves from the air to the coast. German artillery is now in range of the escape routes. The little ships are dodging shells as well as bombs. This is the moment of brilliance you were promised. The Medway Queen makes 7 round trips under fire, a riverboat doing the work of a battleship. 3 routes were available across the channel. Route C was the shortest, but it was under heavy fire. The Admiralty chooses the longest, most dangerous path. The long path is littered with magnetic mines. Crews work in total silence, listening for the click. One wrong turn means certain death for everyone on board. Those who make it onto the ships collapse instantly. They sleep through the noise of the anti-aircraft guns. The exhaustion is deeper than the ocean beneath them. June 1st. The news reaches London. The evacuation count has passed 250,000. Churchill realizes the core of his army will survive. A moment of heavy, historical guilt. The British are leaving, but the French are still fighting. Churchill orders the ships to return for their allies. Operation Dynamo is extended to save the French. The English miracle becomes an allied one. Over 100,000 French troops are pulled from the fire. The RAF finally achieves local air superiority. The Luftwaffe is losing planes faster than they can replace them. The invincible German Air Force has been checked. These men haven't slept in 4 days. Their eyes are red from salt, smoke, and fatigue, but they refuse to turn back while men remain on the sand. Thousands of pets and horses are left behind, a heartbreaking detail often lost in the history books. The beach is a graveyard of everything that couldn't float. Better the sea has it than the Germans, they say. They are leaving their weapons, but keeping their lives. A soldier without a gun can be rearmed tomorrow. June 2nd. The perimeter is now just a few miles. The German panzers are at the outskirts of the town. The end is coming, and it's coming fast. The sound of the last post drifts over the water, a defiant tribute to those who didn't make the boats. The rearguard knows their fate is a POW camp. Churchill is now preparing his greatest speech. He knows the miracle needs to be framed correctly. He must ensure England doesn't become complacent. Not all the heroes are made of steel. Dozens of the little ships foundered and sank. Their names are etched in the history of the Thames. The first troops arrive back on English soil. They expect to be booed for retreating. Instead, they are met with coffee, beer, and cheers. The British public sees them as victors, not losers. The Dunkirk spirit is born in these railway stations. A nation is unified by a narrow escape. June 4th. The final tally is announced. 338,226 men, saved from the jaws of the tiger. 10 times the original estimate of the experts. Hitler has won the battle for France, but he has lost the chance to end the war. The impossible escape has robbed him of total victory. Churchill rises to deliver the words that will change history. The air is thick with anticipation. This is the moment the miracle becomes a legend. We shall fight on the beaches, he declares. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall never surrender. The speech electrifies the world. Even his enemies are moved by the sheer defiance. Churchill has turned a massacre into a masterclass in PR. But the danger hasn't passed with the ships. The army's home, but they've no heavy weapons. England is an island fortress with no guns on the walls. 2,400 field guns were left behind at Dunkirk. 63,000 vehicles are now in German hands. The miracle saved the men, but the tools are gone. This is where the tactical innovation shifts inland. The entire British economy pivots to a war footing. Every citizen becomes a part of the small ship's philosophy. Churchill doubles down on a secret technology. The chain home radar system, the second miracle. The same men saved at Dunkirk will now man the towers. Historians call Dunkirk the greatest mistake of Hitler. By allowing the evacuation, he guaranteed a long war. A war that Germany, ultimately, could not win. The RAF lost 145 aircraft protecting the retreat. The Luftwaffe lost 150 Zeks. The myth of German air invincibility was broken. Today, the Dunkirk maneuver is a standard study. It teaches leaders how to manage a total collapse. Rule number 1. Never stop moving toward the sea. The tactic was simple. Decentralization. When the Navy couldn't do it, the people did. It is the ultimate example of total war innovation. Hundreds of distinguished service crosses were awarded. Many went to men who had never worn a uniform. The line between soldier and civilian was blurred forever. Many of the little ships still sail today. They are living monuments to a week of madness. They remind us that no boat is too small to change history. Churchill used the miracle to silence his critics. The peace party in London was effectively dead. The British people were now committed to the end. 4 years later, the British would return to France. The men saved at Dunkirk were the officers of D-Day. The retreat was simply the prologue to the invasion. Notice the pattern in every great comeback. It starts with a refusal to accept the impossible. Churchill's greatest weapon wasn't a tank, it was his will. 68,000 men of the BEF never made it home. They died or were captured too by the other's time. The miracle was paid for in blood and sacrifice. Every year, the bells of Dover ring for them, a tribute to the sailors who crossed the minefields and the soldiers who held the line until the end. Without Dunkirk, the war ends in 1940. There is no Battle of Britain, no D-Day, and no liberation. The modern world was saved in those 9 days. We tell this story to remember the power of the individual. A fisherman with a motorboat can be a strategic asset. In the face of evil, every small action counts. They called it impossible because they used old math. Churchill used the math of human spirit, and that is a variable you can never count out. This was their finest hour, he said, and for the men on the beach, it truly was. The miracle was complete, but the fight was just beginning. Here's why this matters today. Tactical innovation isn't just about better technology. It's about seeing a path where others see a wall. Military doctrine now emphasizes agility, the ability to pivot when the primary plan fails. Dunkirk is the patient zero of agile warfare. Every few years, the survivors return to the sea. The fleet gets smaller, but the legend grows larger. A reminder that courage doesn't have an expiration date. I am home. The letter simply says 3 words that meant the world to a mother in London, multiplied by 300,000. We've seen the panic, the plan, and the execution. We've seen the halt order and the truck piers. The story of Dunkirk is the story of humanity. It is the story of how 800 boats changed the world. It is the story of how one man's voice became a weapon. It is the story of a defeat that felt like a victory. Think about the scale of the logistics involved. No computers, no GPS, and no satellite imagery. Just paper maps and a desperate sense of duty. The Admiralty office worked 24 hours a day. They coordinated 1,000 moving parts in total silence. Success depended on secrecy and speed. At exactly 5 minutes into this rescue, the tide turned. The first large group of soldiers reached the White Cliffs. The hope of a nation was restored in that moment, but the cost was immense for the British Navy. 6 destroyers were sunk, and dozens were damaged. It was a sacrifice that ensured the future. The Luftwaffe was humiliated on a global stage. They had every advantage, but failed to close the trap. Their failure was the first crack in the Nazi armor. Every pilot who flew those missions was a hero. They flew into a wall of fire to protect men they didn't know. That is the definition of the Dunkirk spirit. Every civilian who sailed was a volunteer. They knew the risks, but went anyway. They proved that a nation is more than just its military. Churchill's leadership was the glue that held it together. He refused to look at the numbers and see defeat. He saw a chance to rewrite the future. And he was right. The army he saved would win in 1945. The men of the beach would become the liberators of Europe. The miracle was a long-term investment. So next time you face an impossible odds, remember the little ships of Dunkirk. Remember the 338,000 men who came home. Remember that a pivot is often better than a charge, and that the most powerful weapon is often the most unlikely. Never underestimate the power of a small idea. This is the legacy of the miracle. This is the lesson of Winston Churchill. This is the reason we study history. Because history isn't just about the past. It's about what we do when our backs are against the sea. It's about finding a way when there is no way. The miracle of Dunkirk is a miracle of the heart. It is the proof that we are capable of greatness, even in our darkest, most desperate hours. Success is not final, and failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. Churchill lived those words every day of the crisis. Imagine standing on that beach in 1940. Would you have waited for the boat or lost hope? The answer defines the Dunkirk spirit. If you enjoyed this dive into tactical brilliance, you won't want to miss our look at the Ghost Army, the men who use balloons to win a war. Hit subscribe to join our community of history buffs. We bring the battlefield to your screen every week. Don't let these stories fade into the past. This was the story of the impossible miracle. Thank you for watching, and stay curious. See you in the next chapter of history.